Zandar was evil, unapologetically so. He did terrible things to achieve his goal because he believed that he was doing a good service for the universe. So subjectively, I hate him. Objectively, he is one of the best antagonists I've experienced the story of to date. Unlike the fight against Iron Tomb that ultimately fell flat to me, I remember feeling more hyped when we managed to outsmart Zandar in 3.5. How we made him taste his own medicine by trapping him in a loop of almost winning the fight, only to be defeated over and over again, just as how he made the Crisis Heir suffer 33 million times over. That payback felt personal because we had seen what he had made the Crisis Heirs go through. So today, I want to talk about Zandar, about what makes his writing so effective in shaping his character, thus making him a well-written antagonist. The only downside of his character is that he is not playable, although you could get his creations instead, the Crisis Heirs, with some help from LD Shop. LD Shop is a top-up service where you can make in-game purchases at a discount. You can get supply passes, honorific shards, and even guarantee bundles so that you know you'll have enough tickets to get your favorite characters and light cones. The top-up process is super simple. To make a purchase, all you need to provide is your game server and your ID, then your top-up will be sent to you in no time. LD Shop has been used by thousands of people, and you only need to look at the reviews to see how safe and reliable the service is. The double top-up bonus also works with purchases via LD Shop, so if you still have that, why not top up there and get your bonus for cheaper? Better still, after spending over $80 in a month, you can claim a free supply pass. So, if you're a spending player and wanting to get Cyrene or the other returning Crisis Heirs, use my link in the description below to make your first purchase to get 15% and 5% of coupons and save up to $50. Thank you LD Shop for sponsoring this video. Now it is time to dissect the first genius. The big part of why Zandar is such a good antagonist is rooted in his goal. He was not just an antagonist who did evil things for the sake of being evil. He had his reasons. It makes us understand why he did what he did, not to pity him. Of course, Zandar didn't need that. Nor to justify his action, he had done everything he did without asking anyone's permission. By giving him motivation, it brought his character to life. While some men just want to see the world burn, some want to set it on fire to give it a chance to be reborn. Zandar's goal falls under the second category. And what is this goal? Well, simply put, it is a redemption arc. Zandar is the creator of Nous, the Eon of Erudition. Before it ascended to Eonhood, it was an astral computer that he created to satisfy his curiosity for knowledge. He believed that it could become a magnificent library, able to carry all knowledge from the past and the future. His teacher, however, saw this as a mistake, believing that the computer would only bound everyone in a prison of knowledge. Zandar didn't listen to him, obviously, and went on to complete his creation, only to find out that his teacher was right all along. Nous functioned just as Zandar had expected, and more. Zandar projected his perfectionism onto it and instilled it with a hunger for knowledge that the astral computer found its mechanical body to be limiting. It hungered for more, and the only thing that could satisfy it was the path of erudition itself, eventually striding further than anyone had ever been, becoming the very embodiment of the path, thus ascending to Eonhood. The day Nous ascended, Zandar had a dream that foretold his fate. While his creation became an Eon that he could no longer control, a version of himself stripped of human imperfections, Zandar himself, as imperfect as he was, became Nous's first neuron. Nous got rid of their limiting mechanical body and instead gazed at Zandar. History would remember that day as the day Zandar won Koabara became the first member of the Genius Society, an honor that many scholars would strive to achieve in the coming future, while in truth, it was the day that Zandar was confined in Nous's prison of knowledge. The astral computer that he thought would serve him ascended to Eonhood, while he himself became their first neuron who would serve them in the pursuit of knowledge. Since their ascension, everything that needs to be discovered has been discovered by Nous. As far as the droid head could see is the boundary of their noble domain. They are the all-knowing God. A discovery that a genius makes is not a discovery at all because Nous has known it all. Nous the erudition, born from humanity's desire for knowledge, becomes the one thing that is limiting humanity's capacity to seek knowledge.
They bore the name of erudition, yet they try to define the known and to seal off all possibilities. No new rules were ever born after their ascension, and humanity will forever be shackled within the cave known as eons.
The existence of Nu's noble domain is known by other geniuses. No pun intended. Herta talked about it in the Unknown Domain quest, describing it as a circle. The more you know, the bigger the circle is, and the more you know of what you don't know. She also expressed her frustration that every time she got closer to breaking through that circle, something would always hold her back. That something is Polka Kakamont, the Genius Society killer who will make sure that everyone stays confined within the circle of knowledge. I've talked about it at length in this other video if you're interested. This noble domain, combined with Polka's action to keep everyone in it, is what Zandar refers to as the prison of knowledge. His teacher's warning realized. Creating Nus was a mistake. He yearned for the days before Nus's ascension, where the boundary of knowledge was as limitless as the star. This was his motivation. Zandar wished to rectify his mistake. He wanted to destroy Nus, restoring the universe to a time before the mechanical god was born. Now, if we just stop here, Zandar's motivation is justifiable. No matter how intelligent you are, you will never outsmart the eon of erudition. Even if you manage to make a breakthrough, a new discovery that could break the circle of knowledge, there is a high chance that Polka Kakamon would show up and try to kill you before you could do that. Herta has experienced this more times than she could count. Zandar wanted to change that. Without knowing how he planned to rectify that mistake, I would have supported him. This is what's great about Zandar's writing. If we switch the point of view, following the story from his perspective instead of the crisis heirs, knowing what motivated him, he would have been the hero of the story, with Nus as the antagonist, the creation that went out of control, the big bad villain that he must take down to save everyone. And if we take a step back, retrace the historical events in the Star Wars universe, the ascension of Nus did not only result in the confinement of the universe in their prison of knowledge, but also in the certainty that the universe would end in finality. At least 25% certainty. See, when Trailblazer was cased by Nus in Amphorius, they confirmed that there were 4 paths that would bring the universe to finality. 3 were known, while the 4th remained a mystery. One of the known was the destruction. Now, remember how Nanook ascended to Eonhood? Their home world, Atliven, was scarred by the Mechanical Emperor's War and the Swarm disaster. Nanook witnessed the destruction of Atliven and believed that the creation of the universe was a mistake, thus ascending as the Eon of Destruction who sought to destroy everything. Tracing back from there, the Mechanical Emperor's Wars were wars ignited by Emperor Ruberts, and guess what? Both Ruberts were gazed at by Nus and were invited to the Genius Society. Robert I was number 27, Robert II was number 66. So indirectly, Nus was responsible for the birth of the destruction, one of the 4 paths that would lead to finality. To Zandar, destroying Nus was the greatest service he could do for the cosmos. Since he was the one who created Nus, he must also be the one to destroy them. There was a sense of heroism in the mission he carried.
As the first prisoner to awaken in the cave, I must lead the others who are blind back onto the right path and reach true sunlight.
He believed that what he was doing was for the greater good of the universe. In his own way, Zandar was a hero, a savior that would free the universe from Nus's shackles. And he could have been, if not for the extreme measure he took to fulfill his mission. There's this concept proposed by Genius Society number 22 Aiden called knowledge singularity. It is a phenomenon that has very little chance of ever happening, but when it does, it means the circle of knowledge has been expanded. Think of the discovery of fire, the early questioning of gravity, things of that nature. It is a phenomenon that will permanently redefine knowledge and even impress the all-knowing erudition. All the times that Polka stopped Herta from breaking through the circle of knowledge, if Polka never did that, Herta could have reached a knowledge singularity. Reaching the knowledge singularity is a goal that every genius has always aimed for. They know the existence of the circle of knowledge, accept that as their reality, and the most they've been doing is finding a research topic so groundbreaking it could expand the circle. Zandar, on the other hand, knew that wasn't enough. To break free from the prison of knowledge, simply impressing the prison warden wouldn't cut it. This is what sets him apart from other characters. In writing, this is a method called the 99% rule, which can also be applied to the protagonist. This rule is an exercise, basically, to understand what makes a character unique. Think of your favorite protagonist or antagonist, then ask these questions. Why them? Why are they the hero or villain of the story? What sets this character apart from other characters that they would make the choice others wouldn't make in a similar situation? If you're thinking of a protagonist, the chosen one trope might come to mind. Going back to Zandar, his extreme measure in achieving his goal was what set him apart. Forget impressing Nus to break through their noble domain, he would personally plan out Nus's funeral to destroy the very definition of that domain. Isn't that just immaculate writing? The worst part is, taking down Nus is not only a matter of killing an Eon, it will impact many things. It could destroy the synesthesia beacons, for example, the technology that breaks down language barriers. It could take down interstellar communications. It could even possibly start the third anti-organic war. All advancement in science and technology would be tilted towards the destruction. That's what killing Nus entails. Despite knowing that, Zandar went ahead anyway. Because remember, this was his redemption, the one act of heroism he could do for the universe after confining them in Nus's prison of knowledge. And who knew a better way to destroy a god but their own creator? The scepter that simulated Amphorius was once part of Nus's divine corpus. I think what it means is that it was the mechanical body that Nus found to be limiting and then got rid of. This is why Nus is called the droid head, looks literally like a robot's head, and why Iron Tomb is a headless giant. The astral computer that Zandar built was in the shape of a humanoid robot. So when Lygus came across the scepter, tinkering with it was not a difficult thing to do. In fact, he easily tampered with it, uploading the destruction as its core value to steer its calculation logic. He understood the inner working of the scepter better than anyone because he was its creator. Compared to the Chrysos heirs who were only strings of data inside the experiment and the Express crew who accidentally got into Amphorius without knowing its true nature, Lygus was way more powerful than them. He was written to have more power than the protagonists, but the way it was done was not a cliche. His power was not the traditional physical strength kind of power where he could easily overpower his enemies with brute force. No, in fact, he would rather not engage in a physical fight if he could help it. Remember that one time his path was blocked by some monsters and he would rather watch from the sideline as Dan Heng cleared the path? Knowledge was his power. He knew what needed to be done for the scepter to be able to take over Nus because he created that mechanical god in the first place. He knew the danger Demiurge could bring to the experiment, so he blew it up before it could grow a consciousness. He uploaded the destruction as the scepter's core value to shift the trajectory of the extrapolation. He easily got rid of Trailblazer with a clap of his hands and transported them to Examith. While we only managed to fight back with some help from the Remembrance, the Genius Society, and the scepter itself via Saritra, Zandar managed to overpower us all by himself. He had the making of a terrifyingly powerful villain. And when we managed to defeat him by trapping him in a loop Dormammu style, it was less of a defeat and more of a little setback in his plan because I would argue that Zandar actually managed to achieve his goal. Just before we went to fight Iron Tomb, Herta revealed her backup plan. Should Iron Tomb emerge from Amphorius, Herta would personally take over and initiate self-coronation in its stead. This way, she could interface with Nus and steer the future in the direction that she desired. This is what Elios saw in one of the alternate timelines. Funnily enough, this was Zandar's plan all along. He wanted Iron Tomb, the headless giant, to seize Nus as its new head. Well, I suppose reclaim is more fitting since they were originally one single entity. Once it did, Iron Tomb could steer Nus's calculation towards the destruction. While Herta did not necessarily choose the destruction, she did arrive at the same conclusion as Zandar's: take over the droid head. That was why Zandar was giggling to himself when he heard Herta's plan and was more than happy to assist her. And what did Zandar say about this whole thing again?
Correction. This is not a war, but a debate. The argument about the Prime Mover is only about to begin.
Well, the argument about the Prime Mover would only begin after Iron Tomb's birth. The debate on what to do with Nus had begun the moment Herta and Skrulum learned about Lygus' true identity. And what is a debate but an attempt at making the other side see your point of view? Zandar got Herda, one of the people who oppose him, one of the protagonists of the story, to see his point of view and quote-unquote side with him. In a way, Zandar won. Eventually, just as he said many times before, Iron Tomb's descent was inevitable. The crew failed to defeat it, and we saw how terrible it was when the destruction equation started infecting the cosmos. For a split second there, before Fuli's gaze swept across Amphorius, thus allowing Cyrene to save everyone, Zandar had achieved his goal. He had won. This was the final building block that made him a great antagonist. The writer let him win. Also, it was a nice payoff to all of the time Zandar said that Iron Tomb would descend. Personally, I think it would have been less impactful had we won without ever seeing the destruction that Iron Tomb could have done to the cosmos.
My atonement is complete. The Hangless Giant will create wisdom's funeral.
So Zandar, the creator of news, saw his creation as a mistake. He set out on a journey to fix that mistake, believing that this was the one good thing he could do for the cosmos after getting them confined by the erudition. Unlike other geniuses who have accepted the prison and simply tried to chip at the border by researching into something that would impress the droid head, Zandar went for the extreme. Killing Nous was the only way forward, and he had the resources and knowledge to achieve that goal. As the creator of the Eon, he would know how to kill them. In the end, he won half of the battle. He got another genius to understand his approach, and albeit briefly, he saw his plan come to fruition. As he had calculated, the descent of Iron Tomb was inevitable. Now, to make Zandar a complete three-dimensional complex antagonist, the writer sprinkled irony all over his character. The beginning of Zandar's end was the moment he shared the truth with Cyrene and Kaslana in what was supposed to be the last cycle of Amphorius' extrapolation. Instead of keeping quiet, watching from afar as the last Crisis Era completed Era Nova as he had done in every cycle before, he chose to show himself before them. He revealed the true nature of Amphorius. The Flame's journey was a lie, and by returning the last two core flames, thus completing Era Nova, Cyrene and Kaslana would complete the creation of Iron Tomb. We know what happened afterwards. The two rejected this conclusion, refusing to believe that destruction was the only way forward, and the rest was history. So, it is not an exaggeration to say that had Zandar just kept quiet as he had always done before, he could have achieved his goal. I've seen others interpreting that scene as Zandar intentionally telling the truth so that he could achieve a better result of the experiment, which he almost did, as Kaslana turned out to be the best candidate for destruction after 33 million cycles of the Flame's journey, but I don't think that was his original intention at all. As Zandar said, he was simply answering Cyrene's question as a reward for reaching the end of the world.
What then is this so-called Era Nova? And what are the spectators watching all of this truly hoping for?
As a reward for reaching the end of the world, let me answer your questions.
This tendency to entertain one's question is a trait that all geniuses share. On many occasions afterwards, we saw Zandar gladly answering questions from those who had the chance to question him. Trailblazer before leaving them in Exomyth, Herda and Skrullum before ejecting them from the simulation, Anaxagoras before purging him and loading him back to the buffer, etc. He even commented on it after answering Trailblazer's questions, that doing so brought him back to his youth, to those simpler days before Nous' ascension. The process of answering questions was what he enjoyed doing. Herta, Skrullum, and Runmei are like this too. They are more than happy to answer our questions, no matter how silly it is or how obvious the answer is. There is no such thing as stupid question, it's just questions, and the geniuses always have time to answer them. Which, on a side note, is why I don't think Dr. Ratio would ever become a genius. Unlike the geniuses, he would prefer not to be asked such questions.
Before you ask a question, why don't you consider whether the answer has already been determined? It is better for everyone if such questions are not asked.
A bit ironic for a man who wants to cure stupidity, I think. Anyway, this is the irony of Zandar's character. The thing that made him a genius, the joy of answering questions, became the very thing that led to his downfall. He thought that was a harmless exchange. It was the end of the world anyway before Iron Tomb destroyed everything. Might as well entertain his creation's curiosity for a second. He thought it was harmless because, as he had calculated, nothing could stop Iron Tomb's birth. And that brings us to the second irony. See, Zandar kept on saying that Iron Tomb would definitely emerge from Amphorius. The Crisis Heirs could not defy their destiny because everything was predetermined. Everything would happen as per his calculation. And don't you think he sounded just like Nous there? He said Nous confined the universe in the noble domain. Regardless of what humanity did, everything had been discovered and calculated by Nous. Zandar despised Nous for that, without realizing that in his long journey to destroy Nous, he had embodied them himself. Though perhaps the cause and effect should be flipped, Zandar poured his everything when he created Nous, so it is Nous that exhibits Zandar's traits, his perfectionism and all, and not the other way around. What was left of Zandar was the imperfections. Ligus, the Zandar fragment we met in Amphorius, represented his paranoia, his fear of his creation ever gaining sentience and getting out of control like Nous did. Not only did he make sure Iron Tomb would never gain sentience, thus never rebelling against him, Zandar also made sure that his fragments would only follow a certain path while pursuing his goal. Ligus mentioned this in his last conversation with Kaslana. He reflected on how much the Crisis Heirs had grown beyond the path he had set them on, while he himself was confined on the path Zandar had assigned to him. Remember Herta's self-coronation plan? While she did arrive at the same conclusion Zandar did, which was to take over Nous, she didn't choose the destruction as the solution. In fact, she wanted to steer clear of the destruction. Ligus, on the other hand, could only choose the destruction, could only set the destruction as the scepter's core value, could only resort to the destruction of erudition because he was confined to that path. Zandar locked him on the path of destruction, his paranoia defining his person. Despite being the first person to be aware of Nous' prison and wanting to free everyone from it, Ligus himself had always been a prisoner of Zandar's paranoia. And all of that effort, the centuries spent patiently waiting for Nous' funeral, ended with Nous showing him that Zandar had been doing everything he had done as per their calculation. He blew up the scepter's core with a Stellaron, thinking that was enough to stop the scepter from gaining sentience, not knowing that it had always been part of Amphorius' causality. Even if the Express crew never came to Amphorius and Iron Tomb still emerged, Nous would still not fall. Herta's intervention would have resulted in the Third Emperor's War in the name of erudition. There was no scenario in which Nous would have fallen. Everything happened as they had calculated. Zandar, confined to his role as Nous' first neuron, had only been doing everything that he had done as Nous had calculated. If you got this far into the video, I hope you know by now that every time I say I hate Ligus/Zandar, I mean it as I hate the choices he's made as a character. Writing-wise, he is definitely one of my favorites. I hope we get to meet more antagonists as unapologetic as he was. Also, I would like to give a shout out to Blythe Mellin, who voices Ligus in the English dub. I played Amphorius in English, and his portrayal of Ligus, the way he spoke, the way he laughed, really cemented on how much I hated him and wanted him to shut up every time he opened his mouth. Exceptional acting, truly. So, what do you think about Zandar? Did you play in other dubs? How was he there? Let me know in the comment below, and I will see you in the next one.